and welcome to Hub City Presents. I am Kris Leonhardt, your host, and today we have with us Kathy Bender, who has written the novel
The Half-Vampire Twins Gothic.
Okay, Kathy, let's talk about how did you get started on writing the novel?
Well, actually, I got into writing when I was younger. I wrote short stories, and then I also entered those short stories into writing competitions. They never got published, but they're up there pretty high with a lot of the other kids. But it was high schoolers, and I was like in 8th or 9th grade, so we had quite the competition there with high schoolers. And then in high school, I took poetry, so I liked writing poetry. In middle school, I was in, and I'm still in the phase of, I really like vampires, how they can like walk among you and you wouldn't know they're a vampire. So I got into the phase of vampires there. So everything I collected was vampires. And I've always wanted to write a vampire book. So, but I was too shy. So years later, I decided to start writing my first vampire book. And I decided to break it up into 4 books. Gothic is my first book, then Ascension, The Covenant, and The Cure. And when I started writing it, my son was 2. Well, then I had a full-time job, and then watching a toddler, that's like another full-time job. So I said, well, I'll just put this book away. And then 10 years later, my son's 12, and he's like, I know you started writing a book, but were you ever going to finish that book? So I pulled it out, and I finished the book, and I dedicated it to my son. I've got for Johnny, whose encouragement helped me to finish this story.
Oh, nice. So what do you think it is about the vampire, the Gothic part of it, that draws you in, that makes you interested, that feeds your creativity?
How they've got different powers, and they could just walk among you, and you wouldn't know that they're a vampire.
Okay,
Try to live among humans and not know that they're really not human.
Okay. So how did you get started, and what was the first thing that led you to start, get your pen and paper or your typewriter or your computer out? What was that first thing to get you started?
To spark my interest?
Yeah.
I guess from just watching some vampire movies, reading vampire books, and I'm like, well, there's so many cool books and movies out there, and I'm like, I want to do something different, but I still want it vampire related there. So then I decided to do Vampire Twins, where they're half human and half vampire.
So is that the only thing that's different? Is that it involves twins? That's different from the typical Gothic novel?
That would be the main one, because you don't see very many books out there. I think I might have come across one, but there's not very many twins actually out there that are vampires. And I just thought they would both sense the same thing, and making them half vampire, half human, so they can still walk among you, but yet they've got to hide that vampire part of their instinct. And then I decided to have it take place in my old hometown of Toma, but I kind of changed it to Tomaha because I wasn't sure if I could use an actual physical town. So I kind of added a vowel to some of the places in my book there. But I've got, they're musically talented vampires. My mom used to be a music teacher. I play instruments, my son does too. So we've got music in our background there. And I like writing poetry too. So I've got 2 songs that I wrote in it. And then I've got high school in there, I've got band in there. And then she actually starts her own music group with the 2 songs that I wrote. And it's got science in it. It's got some martial arts. It's got racing in it. Like, I always liked going to Lacrosse Speedway. So I've got like a 2-man cruiser area. So I'm trying to draw in the male audience too, not just the female audience. So I'm trying to draw action in there too. So it's got some humor, action, and then a little bit of romance in there. So it's a mixture of different things. Some people that have already read it, they say, well, I like the anatomy and physiology part because I like science. Somebody else says, well, I like the racing part. I like the 2-man cruisers there, Camaro and a Mustang. That's my part I like. So everyone's got their own part that they like in the book, which I thought was kind of interesting.
So do the twins follow? You mentioned that there are 3 other books. This is part of a 4-part series. Do the twins follow? Are they in each of the novels?
Each of the books, yep.
Okay. Can you tell us about the future?
The future of, well, not to go too far into it. But book 2 is Ascension. That's going to reveal they will receive their vampire powers. And
so they don't have them in the first book.
They have some of it, but they don't receive their full power of being a vampire until they reach their adult age of 18, their senior year, which is the next year. So the Ascension, they ascend, they receive their vampire powers.
So they basically age into the powers. Yoda doesn't come along
Yoda doesn't come along and no.
So they age into it. Okay.
Yep, because they're 17 now. Once they become an adult, they get their full vampire powers.
Okay. So then what happens from there?
So with that one, since they receive their vampire powers, you have the pureblood vampires that are gonna come after them, which is the Covenant.
So that's the next book.
The next book is the Covenant. They're gonna come after the vampire twins. They want to kill them, pretty much. In the third, and then the last book is the Cure, a cure for the vampires. It's actually. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, don't tell us too much.
Yeah, but it's a cure for some of them, but not all of them, I guess I would have to say. But that's the cure there for the vampires there. Okay. So each book goes along with...
It's a progression.
Progression.
Okay, so do you have other books that you have in mind? Are you sticking with the Gothic, or are you...
Well, actually, my sister had mentioned a book that she wanted me to do, so I'm thinking about not breaking it up into 4, but just 1 book, and it's still going to be science fiction there, but it will have vampires, werewolves, gargoyles, and vampires and that, and angels. Angels, vampires, gargoyles, and werewolves. And it's only going to be 1 book. I'm not going to split it up.
Okay.
So
what
it'll
is
be
it?
a mixture.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
So it'll be a mix of all 4 in 1 book.
Okay. So what is it about the writing process that you enjoy, that intrigues you?
How you can just think of something and just write it down. It seems I have an outline, but then I'm like, I should add this to it. So then you have to redo your outline a little bit because you're adding more to it there. But some days the whole day I'll just write. Other days it'll just be half an hour. That just sparks your interest. I wrote half the book at home, and the other half I wrote upstairs to the Marshfield Public Library, or the Everett Rail Library there, because it was nice and quiet. My son did the things that different events they have at the library, like Tuesdays. So I let them go do this event, and then I go upstairs and I write.
So you mentioned your son.
Yep.
And you're a single.
Johnny.
You're a single parent,
Nope,
correct?
married.
Married. Okay.
Married. Yep.
So, but what do you find that your son likes to get involved with creative process? Has it been a challenge with him? He's older, correct?
He's
Or-
older. Yep. He's 13.
So does he play a role at all? Do you have him read stuff? Do you?
Well, when I did my first book, he says, "Nope, I am not going to read your book until you have it published and I have the first signed copy, and then I'm going to read the book." But then since I must have left it off with a pretty good cliffhanger to read the next book, so he said, when I start writing the next book, I want to start reading the first chapter at least. So he wants to read it now before I publish it. Before he wanted me to publish it before he started reading it. So now he wants to read it first before I publish it.
So he enjoyed it?
Mm-hmm. He likes the comedy part. He's a comedian there. So he likes, I've got a little comedy in there with the anatomy and physiology class, the science class, which is funny. You can hear him giggle on the couch when he read that part. He must have got into the funny part.
So it seems like, science fiction, fantasy, any time that you're going to branch out outside of that?
I did write a children's book.
You wrote it already?
Yeah. But I can't draw. So I'm seeing if my son will illustrate it for me.
Okay, so you're looking for an illustrator.
An illustrator for a book it's already done. I just stick people's all I can draw. So,
So what is the children's book about?
well, it's called Johnny and the Monster Under the Bed.
So it's after your son. It's tied to your son
Tied
somehow.
to my son, yeah.
Is it a true story? Is it based on true?
No. It's a little children's made up. It's pretty much the book is to help children not to be scared about monsters under the bed. So this monster comes out every night, and Johnny's scared, finds out it's a cute little cuddly monster. So it cuddles up with him every time. Like you have a stuffed toy that you cuddle up, but it comes out at night and cuddles up. So it helps kids know that you don't have to be scared of the darker monsters under the bed there, because there's nothing there. But
So you're still kind of caught in the fantasy, sci-fi.
still in the fantasy.
Unless there's something that we don't.
I like the sci-fi, the fantasy. I did have somebody ask me if I wanted to write fact. But there's a lot of research that goes into where fantasy it's all made up, so you don't have to reference anything. Where fact, you would have to reference stuff.
Well said. So where do you go from after that? Are you going to continue writing? Do you think this is going to be a lifelong thing?
Well, right now it's just a hobby, something I enjoy doing, something on the side, my spare time. I like my job that I do right now, and everybody's like, well, now you're going to be a famous author, and then you're just gonna, I like my job. So I don't know if I would, I don't mind doing it just part-time, because it's, it's fun, it's a hobby. Maybe I'll take off when I retire or something like that.
You'll always have something to do.
Yep, everybody has like a bucket list. This is what I want to, even if it's just one book that I published, that was my bucket list. I wanted to publish my very first vampire book. And that was my dream from 8th grade.
So that first book, how long of a time period was from when the idea entered your head to publication?
Well, like I said, I started it when my son was 2, and I put it away. And then I brought it back out again, and it took me a year to finish it, but then it also took me a year to find a publisher. I think the hardest part was finding a publishing company to publish your book. It's not the writing part. It's who you can find to publish your book.
And it's a very specific
Yep,
genre.
and I did a lot of research with that because I always get nervous with people stealing your work.
Yeah.
So that's why I did a lot of research on who I wanted to publish my book.
So Johnny was 2 when you started, and how old was he? How old was he in April?
He was 12.
So 10 years, that's 10-year time span.
Yeah. The second book won't take 10 years to do.
So was there some apprehension in there when you had the book finished and you wanted to get it out there? Was there apprehension, or did you just know that I'm done, I've got it sealed?
And it's ready to go. Yep. I got it done, and because I was still nervous about people taking your work, I actually took my book to the bank to get notarized. So I'd stamped and notarized, signed, and then I'm like, okay, now I'll send it off to a publishing company. Because, I still get nervous with sending your work to anybody you really don't know. Anybody can post anything on the internet. You don't know if it's a true source or not.
Yep. And I've heard of authors sending their works to themselves through the mail, through certified mail, and then it's there in a package.
You don't open it.
Yep. Yeah, then that's
I've heard
their
that
proof.
too. They said that's like the best thing you can do there.
Then
so
you've got
I'll
it.
have to think of that next time there.
So
I went through notarizing, which I think is still good too.
Yeah, anything to
as a
for
witness.
the proof. Yep.
Yep.
So to somebody getting started, somebody out there that has a great idea for a novel, how do you propose that they get started? What kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, think how you want your entire book to be. Have an outline. And your outline could change as you're going through your book if you're adding things. Because that's how mine was. I had a whole outline and I'm like, okay, it's going to be this many chapters, and all of a sudden I added things as I was going along writing. I'm like, well, I'm going to add that to my outline then. And then it changes your outline. But you need to have an outline to go by. And then I also have a character sheet because I've got a few characters in there. So to keep track of all my characters, I've got a character sheet. And from that character sheet, I sent the description of my 2 main characters, which is on the cover of the book, Kyle and Kyra, to the publishing company. And that's what they have on the cover is my description of my characters. So I know some books will just throw things on the front cover and you read the book and it's not even the description of the characters. And this is the actual description of my characters. So it's pretty nice. So an outline to start out with, and then try to write each day, even if it's only 30 minutes, to keep your mind fresh. I had put my book away for so long, I had to reread everything. And then when you get towards the end, reread it over again. There was paragraphs that I decided to add more description. You're writing so fast, you don't realize that, hey, this is all in my head, but the person reading it might not have enough description in that paragraph to understand what you're talking about or visually see what you're seeing. And then for an editor, I would say an English teacher, a professor, even a friend who's really good in English to do your grammar. Mine, I had my brother who was really good with English, so he edited my book. And then, like I said, it took me a year to find a publisher. And that's been, when I do book signings, that's like the main topic is, where do you find a publisher, where you go? So for novels, I when we had the Maple Fall Fest in Marshfield, there was a lady that came from Appleton, and she wrote a post series. Rachel M. Martins, I believe is her name. And I had asked her a lot of questions. She had her whole series done for 4 or 5 books, I believe, in her series. And I had asked her about who she went through for a publishing company. And she loved it. She showed me each one of her books. I looked at them and I'm like, I like it. I said, well, how do you get started? Had a notebook with me, took notes, references. I bought her first book so I could see the website and where to go and what the book looked like that she got through the publishing company there. And then I went through that publishing company then because I really liked the work they did on her book.
And so what was the time frame between when you submitted the work to when it was published?
I thought it was going to be faster than what it was, but there's a time frame there too. When I
That's
submitted,
because you were eager to get it.
I was eager to
Yeah.
get it all published
Can't
and
come soon
done.
enough.
So I went over and trying to think what the time frame was. I started it to publish my book in February. And that was just the cover of the book. And that took, and I don't know why so long, but like 3 to 6 weeks just to do the cover of the book. Then as soon as that got approved, then you submitted the actual, in PDF form, your actual book. That took another about 3 weeks, and that went into March. And then if you want it turned into ebook, it took another 3 to 6 weeks because of coding. So February to and it finally got published and all done, completed April 26th of 2019. So you're talking February, March, April. You're talking 3 months from cover to complete there. If you wanted paper and electronic. And the nice thing is I didn't have to look for somebody to do the cover of the book, somebody else to do the paper copy, somebody else do the electronic part. They could do it all in one spot. And I think they're located out of New Jersey because they're in Eastern time zone. So
it came out April of last year.
yes,
Okay.
April of last year, 2019.
And then your next book.
I was hoping to have it come out this summer, but because of COVID going around and the publishing expenses, I've decided to hold off until next year. Hopefully next year during the summer.
Okay. So where can people find the Half Vampire Twins?
Well, you can go to Hub City Times. I've got autographed books there. I have books too through me. I have book signings. Barnes & Noble up in Wausau, or any of the Barnes & Noble. If you go online, you can order it. They've got the Nook and paper copies. Those are not signed. The only signed copies are at Hub City Times, and if they get a book through me. Or any book signings that I do, then I will sign them. And I know a lot of people go on Amazon.com. That's where I sell probably most of my books and Kindle ebooks. There are many other sources. If you just Google the title, it will come up with many other locations. Some of them I've never heard of before. But if they have an ebook or they sell paper books, more than likely you can order it. But the main ones would be Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Hub City Times, and then through me
Okay.
would be the main locations.
Is there anything you want to add, Kathy, that we didn't talk about?
I don't know if I can think of anything. Yeah, other than my second book will be The Half Vampire Twins Ascension.
Okay.
And hopefully next year is what I'm looking at, with things settling down with the COVID-19.
Okay, and then we'll see you back here when the new book
When
comes
the
out.
second book comes out.
Okay.
Yep, next year.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for joining us for Hub City Presents Author's Corner, and we'll see you next time. On behalf of Kathy Bender and Kris Leonhardt, take care.